ladies. I want to introduce, I hope all is well with you. I hope you all had a good weekend and a good start to a pretty unpredictable work week. I've heard from the House floor that we don't know what procedural votes will bring, but tomorrow, and we should be
That's
finished
on
by
the
Wednesday. But nevertheless, I want to thank you all for coming. I want to introduce you to one of my longest and dearest friends, Reverend Dr. Theresa Thames. She is the Assistant Dean of the Chapel at Princeton University. She is the founder and CEO of Soul Joy Coaching, LLC. She's a dog mom. She's a Peloton sister. She can give you her leaderboard name. She is an avid exerciser, yoga teacher, instructor. She is a daughter, sister, friend, aunt. Most of all, she's my friend. And of course, she is just like me, a young girl from Mississippi. She has Mississippi roots on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, an HBCU graduate, a graduate of Howard University. So, and she also graduated Duke Divinity School, but she lived in DC not too far from the Hill for several years, and her proximity to Howard, her living on the Hill, her actually being on the pastoral staff at Foundry United Methodist Church, which is right downtown DuPont Circle, gives her an insight to DC life and the type of lives that we live. I said that when it was time for us, well past time for us to have this wellness hour, one of my conversations with Keenan, conversations with Shelby about hosting this was that we could get someone that, because we know we have several experienced mentors and friends that could have come and talked to us, but I wanted someone that knew about DC, but not necessarily the ins and outs about us, because I didn't want anyone to come to us with the be deferential to your member, or sometimes you have to suck it up. And that is totally opposite of who Theresa is. Theresa has already, she says it in her bio, she says it everywhere she goes. Joy and freedom are not optional. And it shouldn't be optional for Black women. Now, I've introduced you to Reverend Dr. Theresa Thames. Dr. Thames, I want to kind of tell you a little bit of who our group is, why we called you, why we're asking you to speak with us. I just want to kind of tell you where we're coming from, where we've been, and I could extend all the way back to multiple Congresses, but I'll just go off a little bit from 2020, 2021. And first of all, I realize we are blessed. We have some amazing jobs and amazing access to people and things that nowhere else. People from my hometown would never have some of these opportunities unless I give it to them, reach back and give it to them. But these are things you don't dream of growing up. No one dreams of being a congressional staffer, but sometimes it gets heavy. I mean, first and foremost, we're daughters, sisters, mothers, friends. We're going through the things that Black women go through while we live, but we did. We lived through a global pandemic. We lived through we're still in the pandemic. We were instrumental, several of us on here were instrumental in drafting and getting the CARES Act passed. All once it got passed for our cousins or our friends or people we know that got a little extra $300 or money for to help feed their families. Next thing you know, people are calling our family members or people we know and love lazy off of legislation that we wrote. We get these good periods. We lived in pandemic. We had mask mandates. All the conversations that were going around mask mandates. We had periods of great joy. Several of our friends went to the Biden administration, but we were in a position where we really couldn't celebrate. But then we had the insurrection, and we saw our friends living in a terrorist attack. We saw our we saw members of Congress who we revere, including Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman from Princeton, catch COVID from her colleagues because they were inconsiderate. We wake up the next morning, we see our friends holding doors while pregnant because they are trying to shield themselves from domestic terrorists, all while we have to maintain our positions at home, all while someone will pick up the telephone and call us and say, well, how do I get in touch with the Congressional Black Caucus? Because I need an intern. And it's like, well, you could Google that. All while being the people that you want to call for, well, I need to diversify my office. Well, you have several people you can go to and do that, but people always look at a Black woman as the authority to save, as the authority to, could you help me get this right, or how do I talk to someone, or someone is being aggressive. But we're living in this environment, but we also have to remember we're of service to members. Then we're on that, we're blessed to be here. So we're trying to navigate this. We want to get our minds clear for next year. It's going to be a campaign year. It's going to be nasty, similar to some of the nastiness we saw when then Senator Harris got put on the ticket to be vice president. Probably even nastier than that, because we actually are around members of Congress that do not treat their colleagues well, do not respect the body. So help us navigate. Talk to us. Let us know how to navigate, your suggestions on how to navigate this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hope, and all of your colleagues for having me. I do not ever take it for granted when people invite me into their space, especially when people invite me into intimate space like this, because I know that it's vulnerable. I know that it's high pressure. And I also know what it's like to be a Black woman in spaces where we are maybe the one, the only, or the few. And so my conversation with you all today is how to thrive, not just survive, not just get through, but to thrive in the midst of it all. I hope you said something that really stuck out to me. One, I must say, I'm hoping I met when we were in high school. We weren't even going to the same high school. And all these years later, we met at a student government conference in the middle of Mississippi. And all these years later, Hope has been such a gift to my life. And I'll come back to why that is important. But the role of Black women in society has always been the savior. Black women have always saved, has always shown up, has always nurtured. And what does it mean when the dynamic shifts? What does it mean when Black women get into seats of power and authority of leadership? Is that even though the face has changed and the name has changed, that the culture is sometimes very much the same. And that's what I've noticed over the last 18 months, 2 years, that after I call it the woke days of 2020, a lot of organizations hired or promoted Black and brown women into senior level positions without changing anything about the culture. And so they're put in environments that are toxic, that triangulate, that really lead to a lot of harm. And so this conversation is about wellness, thriving. How are you your best thing always and all the time? Hope said that it is the blessing of doing what you do, and I understand that it is the blessing of being able to be have a seat at a table, being into certain rooms. It is definitely a blessing. However, that does not that doesn't take away from the burden of it as well. There are burdens that come along with it. There's huge responsibilities. And just because something is a blessing also doesn't mean that you just suck up everything that happens and make the best of it. It really is, how do you thrive? And so wellness, I will say many, many quotes that I want you to write down and think about. Wellness is not just about how we appear. Black women, we are able to appear like everything is fine all of the time. We know how to put on the face, we know how to show up in the space and do the thing. However, if we are not well in all areas of our lives, we are not well. Like, you are not winning if you are not well. It is impossible for you to win if you are not well. And what does that look like for us? I think about it, we have to be well in 5 areas of our lives, and these are the things, the framework that I wanna frame for us as we engage in conversation. And the first thing is, like, your self-identity. Self-identity is so important that you are not the work that you do. You do this work, but this is not all of you. As Hope was saying, you all have backgrounds and stories and families and so much that you bring into your work. Your title is not the sum of who you are, and really asking yourself, who am I? Like, who am I outside of my job, outside of my title, outside of what I do for other people? Getting really clear about who you are allows you to have this identity that is separate from what you do. And that's hard for us to do a lot of the times because we are absolutely praised and glorified for all that we do. However, when we lose track of who we are, we really begin to compromise. We begin to lose sight of the things that we want. And the one thing that breaks my heart the most about when I see my colleagues and when I see my peers, especially Black women, is that they've given so much to their jobs and to everyone else that they have nothing for themselves, absolutely nothing for themselves. And then 40, 50, 60, it's like we try to catch up, we try to do the thing, and we've run ourselves in the ground for everyone else. So that's the first thing, is really asking the question, who you are. Who are you outside of what you do? And for some people, that would be a harder question to answer than others. We are the magic. Everything about where you're from, your voice, your hair, all of that is part of what makes you you, and how to hold on to as much of it as you can, especially in a world, society, and office spaces that call for us to assimilate. The other thing is, like, what is your personal vision? This is the second point. Self-identity. The next one is personal vision. What is your personal vision? Your vision for yourself, the life that you want. A lot of times, Black women, we don't get a chance to even vision for ourselves. We follow a paradigm that's been given to us, and we are on this success track of achievement, the next degree, the next job, the next promotion. However, that cannot be the vision. Like, that cannot be the summation of the vision for yourself. And so, what is that vision? And a lot of times it's difficult to name that vision because we've so divorced ourselves from wanting the other things, whether it's intimate relationship, whether it's be able to travel, whether it is family, or there's so many intimate things that we usually set off to the side because our vision is usually around achievement. And so, thinking about your vision that's not around the promotion or the next thing, but what kind of life do you want to have? Like, holistically, what kind of life do you want to have? Even thinking down to the details of what kind of, when you wake up in the morning, how do you want your house to smell? Who do you want to wake up to? What are colors that you like? Like, this vision for your life, not just for your career, but for your life. And so, self identity and vision. The third one is something that I know you all are excellent at doing, is having a strategy. And we have a strategy so much around career and education. However, I don't think that we always have a strategy around life. Like, a strategy around what are the things that sustain you. So whether it is spirituality, whether it is a location, whether it is this passion project that you have, like, what is your strategy around living those things, making them a pillar in your life, not just something that you tap into back and forth, but really commit to in your life. However, you all can probably have a strategy for my life, the person next to you life, the town you live in, but how do you have a personal strategy for yourself is difficult. The next part that is so pivotal, and this is where hope comes in for me, is the role of community. We cannot do anything alone. And a lot of times we've been put in situations where we are the one and only. And what you all have gotten here, this group of just getting together on a Monday afternoon, just shows the importance of community. And I've had a lot of peaks and valleys in my life, in my career. I'm here at my amazing office at Princeton University. I'm the only Black person in this entire department here at the university. And what does it mean for me to seek out community and also be connected to community that I've had? And so I've known Hope. Hope is not like my best friend that I could call her and confess everything to, but Hope is a friend in my corner that I've known for I want to say over 30 years now. And so what does it mean for you to have people not just that you network with, not that you just have transactional relationships with, but how do you have community of nurturing? And what does that look like in every area of your life? And that is multiple friend groups, multiple ways that you show up. But isolation is a killer for a lot of professional Black women, especially when we find ourselves in spaces that are already competitive. We can turn other women into competition when it's absolutely not even necessary. And then, lastly, but it is actually the first thing, is this commitment to self care. And commitment to self care is not optional. Like, it is a die hard commitment of no one comes first but you. And I know that even in the bedroom, no one comes first but you. Like, you have to have this commitment to your health, your mental health, your physical health, all of the ways, our spiritual health, all the ways that you are a whole person, having commitment around your self care. And because I have a commitment around my self care, I have a commitment around my community care, the care of those that I'm in charge of. So I have a staff here of 20 people, and I am the head of staff. And I model vacation, I model self care, I model coming in later, all the ways that I take care of myself. I model to my staff and team. I don't email them when I don't need to, like, just all the ways that it's important for me to take care of myself, how that transformed into community care. And so, if you are not taking care of your health and your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual health, there is no winning. If you are not well, you cannot win. What I'll close with is what we've seen. You all have seen it, I've seen it, the absolute burnout of Black women. And it has been through heart attack, it has been through trolling and attacks. I mean, you all have definitely seen that. And how do we stay well? And not just the bare minimum stay well, but thrive in wellness. It is an intense time of pressure. These last 18 months have been the best of times and also the absolute worst of times. And how do we roll with the ups and downs, but also just this commitment that I will be well? And for me, wellness looks like, as Hope says, like every single morning I walk, I have my Peloton, I pray, I journal, I do yoga. I really try to find pockets of time that's not about fixing me. These thunder thighs will always be here no matter how small or large I get. So it's not about fixing and nitpicking at myself, but giving myself breathing room, showing up for myself before I show up for my husband or my office or anything else that I do. And so this place of wellness is that every woman in my family has died. My sister, my mother, my grandmother, there is not a living woman in my family. I am it. And I think about how much they worked. They worked so much that they never enjoyed life. And so for me, it is important to turn that around, that I have a life that I lavish in joy, that freedom is not optional for me, that I love the work that I do. I love being a dean at Princeton. And if it was over tomorrow, I know that I have what it takes to move on to the next thing. Like, this is not my full identity. And so, how do you all, and this is the transition into the conversation for you all, what does it mean for you to think about boundaries and your personal and professional life? What does growth look like for you? Not just growth of money. Yes, we do need to be paid. Yes, we need to have this place of comfort. But what does spiritual growth look like? What does emotional maturity growth look like? And what does self care and community care look like for you? And as you go into what will be an unbelievably hard pressed season, the next round election coming up, what will joy and freedom look like for you? Like, how will you carve out joy and freedom in the midst of unbelievable pressure? And so I will stop there, and you can put questions in chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask questions however you want this to go.
Well, I thank you so much. And as everyone gets their questions together, I will just start. And so, one of the things is that, you know, once again, we're here. We understand the gravity of our positions. We also understand how few people have them, and we're glad to be here. Um, how do we keep on as we thrive? How do we thrive during the midst of, and I'm not even talking adversity as people being rude to each other on the house floor or anything like that, but when we actually have something adverse happen in our lives, when we know we still have to pick up and get back to work, get back to our families. How do we thrive in the midst of those things, especially if it's something that is not sudden, it's something that's long term that we have to deal with?
Absolutely. It's putting together a care plan. What is your care plan? And what does that look like for you? What is it that you need? And I know that this sounds really rudimentary, but it's important to think about, like, what do you eat? Who are your people? Who do you call? Who do you trust in your office to be an ally? Who's a co-conspirator for you who can cover for you? Um, I I'll share that my mother died on Christmas Eve. I had a sermon to do on Christmas Day. I'm from Mississippi. I was in New Jersey. I needed to fly home. However, like in the moment, I had to do a sermon on Christmas Day. Like I had to keep things moving. And I understand definitely hope of we have to show up on days when we don't want to show up. However, I was able to show up and do a sermon hours after my mom died because I had things in place. I had someone who had my back. I knew what I needed to do. And so having a care plan in place for yourself so that when things fall apart, because shit falls apart, that you're not building as you're trying to go. And so really think about who's in your corner, what is your corner, what do you need as you go through hard times.
So, this is a thank you so much for that. So, a question from the chat is, a lady in the chat says she would love to hear your advice how to break out of the role of being the fixer. Are there practical steps beyond setting the boundaries? Are there any tactics or strategies that work better at home versus the workplace?
Great question. Thanks for asking that. I smile when I see practical steps beyond boundaries because boundaries, that is the practical step. A lot of times, what I know for myself and what I see in my clients and what I see in my colleagues is that for Black women, we become fixers because we're trying to prove something. We become fixers because we're trying to overcompensate for something. We become fixers because there's something about, I need to show that I can do, that I can be. And what if you were to sit back and say, I'll let this person figure it out? Like setting the boundaries of, I do not need to be the person to fix it. And that if this goes wrong, there's a learning lesson in that. And so a lot of times our need to step in and fix is really what's feeding that is our need to prove that we're competent. It's our need to prove that we're worthy. It's our need to prove that we matter in a system that's set up. And that's at home and that's at work. It is true that we teach people how to treat us. And so if you are off on a day and someone fixer or rescuer, we often do one or the other. Absolutely. That's what we're known for. That's what people praise us for. That we can make $1 out of 15 cents. We can turn manure into gold. But do we have to? And because also the last thing I'll say about this, a lot of times we think that someone else's mistake reflects poorly on us. We go in and fix it because we don't want it to reflect poorly on us. And it's like, no, having boundaries around what belongs to someone else, holding people accountable, having a feedback loop. But it's hard. It really, really is hard. But if you feel the need to jump in and fix all the time, think about what that need is from. What are you trying to prove or overcompensate for?
Thank you. Someone else wants to know, how do you unwind and refocus in healthy ways that you mitigate stress after a long day or week? I think we heard you speak about your exercise plans, but what else?
I am an introvert with an extrovert job. I talk all day. I'm a professional talker. And by the time I get off the Zoom, I will be worn out from a whole day of talking, but this is what I do. And so I don't listen to music on the way home. Like this is practical, tangible things. I don't listen to anything. I drive home in silence just to give me time to debrief. I am married, and as much as I love my person also knows that when I get home, do not ask me for anything for the first 30 minutes to an hour. I don't want to talk about it. I need to debrief. I wake up very, very early. I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, and I wake up that early because once upon a time I was a single parent, and if I woke up when my child woke up, I would be exhausted because it is onslaught of all the things that he needed. And so I wake up at 4:30 because it gives me a buffer to just take care of myself during the day. Um, so I just have these little pockets that refuel my tank. So I do my Peloton. Peloton is an introvert's dream because I'm able to be on there with 10,000 people and be by myself. I walk. Walking allows me to just sort of do like this release steam. And so just these little practices of like, do not bother me. This is what I need. That's how I recharge and refuel. But you got to choose. If you're an extrovert, I have colleagues who go to dance class after work. Like they got to go dance. They got to go to a bar. They have to, whatever you know that's good for you. That's what you. That's what you can do for yourself.
Now, does your fur baby respect your 4:30 a.m. time to yourself?
I had to train him. I had to train him. So
Oh, teach people and the fur children how to treat you.
yes, I had to train the dog that we do not go out very, very first thing. But also, the one thing I will say it's true is so Princeton is a huge Ivy League university, but my colleagues know in my department and outside of my department not to ask me to do things at a certain time because they know I go to bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock. So they're really mindful to say, before we ask you to do X, Y, and Z, are you available? I've only been here for 6 years, but they know that this is how I live my life. Like it is the character of who I am, that I am strategic, I am joyful, I am honest, I give feedback, and I have boundaries around my time. So if I say no to something, it is because I absolutely am saying no to it. And so even in spaces, we teach people how to treat us. The last thing I want to say really quick about boundaries is that we say we have a boundary, and then if we keep breaking them over and over again, no one's going to take our boundaries serious.
You just said something very, very clear. Honesty. Talk to us about the role of honesty in the workplace. I think one of the things is, and you and I have discussed this in other situations, is that we are always taught, number one, the jobs that we have are already off the paradigm. Our parents, these weren't lawyers, these weren't doctors, not engineers. So they're already a little shaky and new to some people. But in addition to that, a lot of us have grown up with the culture, and I mean, even was told to us sometimes in our college classes, don't mess up that job. Do what it takes to keep that job. And that will lead some of us coming to the office. Pre-COVID, people were coming to the office with the flu, sick, couldn't walk, things going on internally, not being able to always sit up straight. But they were like, "But I showed up, and are you okay?" "Oh yeah, I'm fine." Or even sneaking off to do doctor's appointments or to take their child to dance class. Talk to us about the role of honesty in the workplace, or even honesty when it comes to being around your partner and your community.
Yeah, that's such a big one, Hope. And I will name that I have privilege. Like I have privilege in my position, what I'm able to do, how I'm able to move in this space. So I get that. I also know that what my grandmother used to say to me is not, it's not what you say, but how you say it. I believe in non-passive communication to be direct and succinct as possible and give people a game plan ahead of time, way ahead of time. Like this is the game plan. These are the things that are priorities for me. And so like I said, I'm the only Black person in my office. I have a team of 20, and 16 of the people are white men. And they were not prepared for me to come into this role. The youngest person of color, a Black woman, a queer woman, just all of these things. And they were just like not ready for it. However, what they did appreciate about me was this honest feedback loop that I have, this way of checking in, this way of being really, really, really clear about what my limits were, but also being a colleague, a real colleague. The space that we think when we come in and we're sick and we're going over and above, what we think that looks like is not what it looks like at all. It really just looks like we are trying so hard to prove our worth. And in workspaces, they already know what our worth is. Believe me, they know. If you were to leave, they would be distraught about your leaving. And so I need to be honest about what it means for me to stay, what it means for me to show up. And so how do we do that is advanced, succinct communication, being as clear as possible, as succinct as possible, and speaking on it at an advance as possible. I don't know if you all watch Insecure. I was so upset when Molly wouldn't tell her coworkers what was going on with her mother, and Molly is like moving around, like trying to sneak around, go to the hospital, call the hospital. And it's like, how much easier would have been if she would have been able to say, "My mother is in the hospital, and I need to pay attention to this in this different way." It's like, girl, all this energy that you're using to hide and move around, just be honest about what you need. A lot of times we don't speak honestly, Hope, because we don't want to seem like we're a liability. And we don't know how to talk about our things without oversharing. We don't know how to have communication sometimes without, and sometimes it's like, we don't need to give people all the details. We can just say, this is what's going on, naming it and letting it go. So that's what I mean about being succinct and not thinking about yourself as a liability. You're an asset. You're never a liability, but you become a liability when you're not able to communicate what you need. And it's also manipulative when we want people to guess about what we need instead of just being honest about what we need.
Anybody else have any questions? Well, I will continue on to just kind of just ask a few things about the workplace and some of the environments that we are in, and going back to being being the one or the few or the ones that people deem as responsible. Um, Still, some of the culture has not changed. We have several sisters that have looked and have sounded the alarm on the culture, not even just diversity numbers, but how portfolios and work is given. So, how do we ask for work that is actually meaningful to us? Because there are a lot of times, so this is what happens on the Hill quite often. You can be the staffer there, and maybe even work on quote unquote women's issues or quote unquote African American issues. But when the cardiologists come to town, they say, well, that's a healthcare issue. When the Secretary of Agriculture comes to visit the member or the senator, they don't give the African American issues staffer the opportunity to put information about the 1890 colleges in the briefing memo and say, well, I mean, we were here to talk about ag issues, but excuse me, there are Black farmers and there are Black colleges that actually specialize in agriculture. So how do we actually go to our bosses and say, look, if you gave me this portfolio, I'm going to do it, I'm going to perform it, but I need the resources, or I need you to actually listen to me and give me that, instead of, or you know a lot of times people are just like, hands up, I quit.
Yeah, two things. It is a lot of times we know our worth, but we do not know how to articulate our value. And those things aren't synonymous. And so, how do you strategically articulate the value that you bring to whatever project? And I know that is infuriating because that means that you have to do more work. However, it's like we don't go in on feelings of, well, I have this other expertise. It's like, no, like really bringing all of the strategy of how you bring value to that project. How do you bring value to your team? Like laying out your receipts, literally laying out your receipts of your area of expertise. And a lot of times we are so badass in so many things, but we don't know how to talk about it. We do not know how to frame it within the larger context. And so that's a skill that we have to get used to doing, is bragging on ourselves, and not just bragging on ourselves with like, oh, I'm really dope at this, but really coming through with strategy. And the second part of that is articulating your value in a way that manages up. So in systems, it's all about making the other person look good. So how do you articulate your value in a way that makes whatever staffer or whatever person is making that decision, that they see you as an asset? Of course, we cannot change how people see us, but let's not ever take for granted that people do see us. So over and over and over again, managing up of having me on your team is the asset. And this is why. This is the nuance that I bring to the conversation. This is how this is relevant now. This is the perspective that I bring. And that takes way more work than maybe the Chad and the Toms have to do. However, it is so important that we learn to articulate clearly and strategically what we bring to everything that we do.
Thank you. And I think this will probably, unless someone drops something in the chat, but this is something that kind of resonates with me because I've heard it in different spaces, in different spaces around the hill. But how do you or address or even try to resolve within the how dare you? You work for one of the most powerful senators, one of the most visible people on the hill. You have the top office. You make the most money. Your member gets to the meetings with the president, vice president, and brings you along. You know the entire Congressional Black Caucus and the entire Congressional Hispanic Caucus. You're an LD. I mean, you're an LD at 25. How dare you have something to say? How dare you complain? How dare you have a wellness a wellness hour, saying that you're stressed out? Because it's not like you're working, and there's nothing wrong with this, but it's not like you're working in an uncomfortable position. It's not like you're doing hard labor. And do you know how many people are dying and lined up to get your job? So how to deal with that?
Um, I do not I do not have survivor's guilt. I do not walk around in the space of I owe someone something. I do not have this mindset of I'm only here because of X, Y, and Z. I really do say, and why not? And anytime that comes, like, oh, you have this blah 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 blah, and why can't I ask for more? And the response to that is never anything that's valid. It is all assumption. It is all out of the blue. And so for us, my thing is like, we deserve everything. We deserve all the luxury, all the benefits on top of the benefits. And so in this space, I never shrink ever. I ask for the next thing, the latest thing. Today, my computer wasn't working. I want the latest one. Like, and it's like, well, we just got your laptop, and like, so it's just this whole thing of like just not settling. And a lot of times we are so happy just to be in the room. We're so happy just to be at the table. And then you sit at the table and realize there's nothing on the table that you can eat. And so you sit there and you starve instead of really asking for what you need. And for me, that comes from I truly have no fear when it comes to, I am clear that this is not the end all be all for me. Like, and so if me asking or me pushing makes you uncomfortable in whatever capacity that may look like for you, okay, it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay that this is a tense conversation. I am okay with conflict. I'm able to stand in that. But what I will not do is compromise. What I will not do to shriek to make you comfortable. A lot of times, and this is the last thing, the last analogy that I'll give. You know, when you go to the grocery store, especially if you have cash and they're giving you your change back, you are moving out the way so fast, stuffing the money in your purse that you haven't organized yourself because you're inconveniencing yourself for the person behind you to be convenienced. Then it's like, I will not go through life inconveniencing myself to make you comfortable. And so, yes, you all have these positions. It's not like someone gave them to you. You also worked to get there. You also can ask for more. There are never limits put on white men. There are never limits put on what white men could get or the benefits that they could get. So if there's work travel, yes, I want first class. Like if there is accommodations, yes, I want the best. And why not? Until you can give me a substantial why not, I will always ask. I will always ask.
Thank you so much. Um, Dr. Thames, thank you. This was an amazing, amazing time with us. Do you have any final words?
I do. I am so thankful for all the things that you all do. I really, um, I see hope. I see your faces, and I say, I cannot imagine what it means for you all to be in these roles and the impact that you all are having. And the one thing that I just want you is to just take care of yourselves. Whatever that looks like for you right now. Like, I'm not saying you go and go to an ashram tomorrow in the middle of India. Like, all of that's not possible. But how do you take care and nurture yourself? And I'll end with a way that I usually end a lot of my coaching sessions. is that things are going to go wrong. Things are going to go wrong. We're going to have broken hearts. Life will fall apart. But what I do know that something had to happen, right? Some things plural had to happen for us to be in this moment together. And on your worst days, when it's hard, when you are just barely showing up, just know that something had to conspire, some things plural had to happen right for you to be here. And because you are where you are, there's so many of us who are able to show up where we are. And so I am just thankful over and over again for all that you do. And you are not winning. There cannot be any winning if you're not well, and that is your physical, mental, and emotional health. And just small baby steps of putting those things in place um, will make a pivotal change in your life. And so, thank you for all that you do and all that you are.
And thank you so much, Dr. Thames. Thank you for coming to us this evening, and we're going to let you get on with the rest of your evening because it's almost your bedtime.
Honey.
You have to eat. You have to eat. I do want to tell you, like Dr. Timms, she does. She enjoys good good food, like good wholesome food, probably more than what they have for us at these vending machines. So she is an excellent meal prepper, and she does everything in excellence, even when it is time for her to enjoy dessert. She's she posted last night about the cookies and she was like, honey, this is manna. We are not in the spirit of lack around here. And I think that's one of the things, breaking generational curses, breaking chains, but not even just breaking generational curses, but breaking what people have said in what we thought was the norm.
Yep.
um,
Yeah.
so thank you so much. We
Thank
wish
you
you
all.
happy holiday season.
Happy
I
holidays.
know it's a lot because you get tugged upon a lot in your profession during the holiday season. So thank you all so much, and
Thank
happy
you.
holidays to those of y'all at BWCA who if I do not see you before Christmas and the New Year. So take care.